Welcome to another episode of the Michele Tafoya podcast. How many times lately have you heard the question asked, what is a woman? And the fact that some people are unwilling to answer that question. Well, my next guest delves into this in her new book, The End of Woman. It's fascinating. She's really interesting. And boy, is the research phenomenal. She is next.
Now, it's time for some sanity. It's the Michele Tafoya podcast.
So this is the book, The End of Woman, How Smashing the Patriarchy Has Destroyed Us, by Dr. Carrie Gress. She's some of you may know her. She's the author of Theology of Home. She has done a lot of research into how feminism began and sort of this dark, winding road it has taken to where we are today. This is a great conversation, and it's really timely. I mean, this is one of the issues of the day. What is a woman? Can men be women? It's the erasure of women. All of this is really timely. And Carrie Gress is going to join us and give us her thoughts on this as she researched for years for this book and some of the things she discovered. I can tell you what a woman is. It's a person who is often concerned about her skin. Oh, by the way, let me say this too. Carrie Gress, the author of this book, says that a lot of men really enjoyed it because she doesn't bash on men in this. So this, and men are worried about dark spots too, right? So that dark spot on your face, is it still bugging you? And what about the liver spots on your hands and the ones on your neck and your chest? Now you can watch them disappear safely and quickly in 3 minutes. Introducing the Genucel Dark Spot Corrector 3-step 3-minute dark spot luxury system, and it does exactly what it sounds like. By using the Cristal's world-famous microdermabrasion before the dark spot corrector and finishing with a touch of the collagen-building Genucel XV, you'll see the dark spots disappear before your eyes, instantly, smoothly, and luxuriously. What you're watching on the screen are real results in just a couple of minutes. It's incredible. But don't take my word for it. If you're not blown away with the results, you get 100% of your money back, no questions asked, free shipping, free returns. So go to genucel.com/Michele. Order now. The new dark spot treatment system. Order it today. Say goodbye to the pesky spots tomorrow. That's Genucel, GENUCEL.com/Michele. There's more to this story. All 3 products are included in Genucel's most popular package for August. So you get your Genucel bags and puffiness serum also included, all for 70% off retail. Experience the luxury and the effectiveness of Genucel. Order now and watch those dark spots poof in 3 minutes. 70% off while supplies last. Genucel.com/Michele. GENUCEL.com/Michele with 1 L. Genucel.com/MICHELE. Go there now. Say goodbye to the dark spots. And after this, say hello to Carrie Gress. Carrie Gress, it is great to have you. Congratulations on the book. This is a kind of a hot topic these days. We saw the film come out, What is a Woman?
Yeah.
It feels like women all over America are having to say, hold on a second. I'm not a birthing person. I'm a woman.
Right.
So
Right.
what happened in your sort of sphere of life that made you want to write about this?
Yeah. Well, I think like most women, that question of why can we not answer what a woman is? Why is this such a challenge for us? I think the other reality is just looking at, the metrics of women these days. I've spent a couple of years working on this topic, and we don't see women getting happier. We're seeing increased rates of depression, suicide, divorce, STDs, all of these awful things. And, it's really pointing to something bigger. Why are women miserable? And, so I think those kinds of things. And then, of course, the trans issue obviously has really brought everything to a head in ways that, I think this book tries to answer that. How do we get to that point? How are these things connected? So that's really what the motivation was. But I have a degree in philosophy. And so it was just really a great exercise to go back and look at the roots of this and see, how we got to this point in the culture where we're at now.
Well, the word that comes up again and again in your book and in your work is feminism. And
Yeah.
I remember, look, I will date myself, but I went to the University of California at Berkeley, and I
Mm-hmm.
had friends who were taking classes in women's studies, and I was
Yep.
thinking, women's studies, what is that exactly? And so I'd
Mm-hmm.
go and sit in it with a couple, and to me, the feminist idea was that I can do anything better than you can. It
Yeah.
was like
Yeah.
this competition with men, and
Mm-hmm.
it seemed healthy at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I'm further on in my life, I've had children, which was like an incredible blessing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like why don't we just acknowledge our differences and understand that? But I think feminism started, didn't it, with this, from this place of women feeling oppressed?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I think, and I go back in the book all the way to the very, very earliest roots of feminism. And I think what the question was not really oppression. It was how do we help women, because women have very difficult lives. If you look at the early feminists, that's the question they're asking. But the problem is the way that they answer that question. And it wasn't helping women as women, but helping women to become more like men. And we see this, like your experience at Berkeley, where women kind of, things changed a lot, over the centuries. But when you get to the 1960s, you suddenly have this interjection of the new left, which is trying to frame everything in Marxist terms. So men are oppressors automatically just because they're men. Women are oppressed and victims merely because they are women. And this just became sort of part of the ether. I mean, I think we still live and see this, around us all the time today. So that's real. The real problem is that we put on this, a pedestal, really, manhood and to be like a man, and women have gotten into this bizarre relationship where we hate men because they're the oppressors, but we also want to be just like them and do things better, like you were saying, because this is what we've been told is really the goal of our lives. I know my whole life, this has been something that's dangled out in front of us is, you can do this better than men can.
Yeah.
And I think that's really where we got stuck, is the culture took that on. And this is, no one's paying attention to womanhood or has even said anything good about womanhood, really for the last 50 years. And so you see these little girls who are wanting to transition into boys. And it's not because they want to be boys. It's because they just don't want to be women, because they don't see really any good reason to be women. We don't
Which
talk
to
about
me
it.
is the complete opposite of what feminism
Yes,
should be, right?
exactly.
We
No,
should be
it's amazing.
championing each other. And
Yeah.
it is interesting to me that a lot of the sort of the women's social groups out there, National
Mhm.
Organization of Women, et cetera,
Yeah.
I observe that they really only support certain women,
Yeah.
not all
Yes.
women. Like
Yeah.
if you're a conservative or a really feminine woman, it
Mhm.
doesn't seem to me, if you don't fall within their ideological
Yeah.
viewpoints,
Yeah.
they will abandon you. They
Yeah.
abandoned, look, I'm so hesitant to mention any names because people will go, oh my gosh, you're defending fill in the
Yeah.
blank.
That's
But
like the
Sarah
thing.
Palin was abused, man, and no one stepped up for her.
Yeah. And I think that that's the amazing thing, is it's not just these national groups. It's every aspect of our culture. That's the narrative. If you look at Hollywood, you look at fashion magazines, Vogue magazine, all the Supreme Court justices and Democrat wives get the Vogue treatment, but
Yeah,
Melania Trump can't get it. So
right.
it's everywhere, and that's the hard part, because that not only do they shut out conservative women, but they also vilify us or make us look stupid, or they ignore us. There's those sort of three elements, and I think it feels really incumbent upon those of us that are conservative to start feeling, looking at how do we start filling in that gap? How do we start creating media where women like that can actually get a real hearing and be treated well and be promoted, because they're certainly not going to be on the front of Vanity Fair. So I think it's a huge imbalance that we've allowed to fester, and we haven't spent enough time thinking about it and putting money into it as conservatives, because we've just gotten used to that. It's just sort of the way that it is, and it doesn't need to be that way.
No, it doesn't, and it shouldn't. And so, as you've explored and written the book, what are ways that we can start doing that? It seems to
Mhm.
me, if you're a conservative woman, you're naturally, people assume things about you. They
Yeah.
assume you're super religious. They assume you're pro-life. They assume a lot of things about you
Mhm.
that you don't stand up for other women, that you don't, they kind of
Right.
think that I feel as though they think that you're accommodating men.
Mm.
And I just think it's so unfair, but clearly
Mhm.
this narrative is out there.
Yeah.
How do we start to
Yeah.
fight back?
Well, I think that's a great question, because part of our problem too is not only have feminists define their, what the cool good woman looks like, but they've also defined what the bad woman looks like. The Handmaid's Tale. They use these strong visuals to sort of imply that unless we just agree with them, then we must be stupid or submissive, overly submissive, or a doormat. That's kind of how they've painted us into a corner. And sadly, we haven't done enough. I think something like one magazine, if you're at the checkout stand at the grocery store, it would be great to see one magazine that actually celebrated womanhood. And, so many women in the United States, they're so, just think about the amazing stories that could be done on early American women and all the amazing things that women are doing in the culture today. It doesn't have to be overly political. It can just even be something really fun. And I think that's a piece that we miss, is the fun aspect. And I've published a series of books called Theology of Home to really start sending a different message to women, that we don't have to fit into this cookie cutter, but that we have a great way of looking at ourselves as women in a very different respect. So those kinds of things, even Barbie, look at how successful Barbie has been, because Barbie's supposed to be fun. I didn't think it was a particularly fun movie, but they got the trappings right, nostalgia, a lot of pink, high heels, pretty women, on and on. So I think that, even if we could make a film that was as fun as Barbie, that didn't have all of the baggage with it, we didn't feel like we were getting, indoctrinated when we went to it. I think that those are really easy places where we could start putting money to just start shifting the narrative back to something more healthy, and people would really enjoy engaging in, instead of being frustrated by it.
I haven't seen Barbie yet. I'll confess. I'm very much late to the
Do
party,
not go
but
unless you have to.
Ken in the
Oh,
film,
yeah.
is he made to look like a stupid kind of buffoon?
Oh, yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
they've done to men in this film.
Yeah. Well, I have used the image, and this will date me, but I remember watching the Gidget movies with my mom back in the day. And there's Gidget, and who's this, fawning little girl. And then there's Moondoggie, who her whole life revolves around. Imagine Ken as Gidget. That's what they've done, is Ken becomes this sort of, my whole life is about Barbie and I have nothing outside of it. And, I just am here on the beach, waiting for her to notice me. That's what they've done to Ken and all the men in it. There's not a useful man in the whole film. So yeah, no, it's a complete mockery of men from start to finish.
That's the interesting part about all of this, is that we're not only having this inability to define women for what they are, but it seems to me that men kind of take some heat too, that they are dumbed down, that they are made to look foolish, stupid, unintelligent, so that maybe that's the only way that women can supersede men, if you will, is to make the men look really stupid. I'm not sure, but I have this vivid memory, Carrie, and I'm just going to share it with you. Long ago, watching television with my dad, and commercials would come on where the woman was, and obviously commercials are targeted toward women because they're the ones buying the products and all of this. Yep. But the commercials made the father figure, the husband figure, look really stupid and buffoonish. And my dad, a Hispanic male, sat there and said to me, "They always make the dad look like a dope. Why do they do this? We're not all dopes, And for some reason that stood out in my mind. And I don't think he was wrong.
No. And it's continued to this day. I mean, if you watch any daytime TV, a man can't even put a diaper on a baby unless the woman is somehow helping, he's like got a turkey baster or something, like the stupidest things. They just make men look ridiculous. And part of this is very intentional. It's amazing to see how effective feminism is when you're dealing with men. Men, it's like kryptonite. It just shuts them down. They don't know what to say. They know they are not going to win any argument about feminism, so they just don't even want to delve into it. And, they have my sympathies, because I think they've been they've learned, they've been abused by it, and they've had women gang up on them, or they've lost jobs, their job opportunities, or whatnot. Most people, you just pay attention to how men talk about these things, and you hear, oh, well, I have this feminist boss. Well, they're just going to try and keep their heads low. So I think that that's part of the problem, is that men don't really know how to address this. And, the best way they can do it is by being good men, because that's really what perpetuates this, is that lie that, all men are abusers and awful and, oppressing women through their behavior. So I think that that's the, part of the solution. But it also has to be incumbent upon women to just say, like, this is ridiculous and insulting. And, having a culture built on the resentment of one sex for the other, and then vice versa, is not really a way to build a civilization. And we see how it's spread into the woke movement. I mean, this is the exact same mechanism that's being used in all of these areas that are damaging our culture right now.
Well, what do you think the end game is for these people who are trying to push this ideology, and it's taken root in a number of places? You well know that. Yeah. What is the end game for them? What is the goal? Because it, like you said, it doesn't seem like women are any happier. It doesn't seem like men are any happier, and they're walking on eggshells constantly. And we're just pitting one against the other, and I'm not sure who benefits.
It's about power, because look who has the power in the culture to control these things. I mean, this is part of the reason to decimate the family, especially the authority of a husband, is that it decimates the family. They fall apart very, very easily. And this is part of the goal, because people that are not in strong families are going to be a lot more broken. And we see a lot of that going on. Even discussion, magazine editors getting together to talk about, the products that they can promote, and products that are actually and articles that are actually going to be damaging to women. Because if there's damage in women, they need the magazines more for all the self-help and whatnot. So it's this vicious, awful cycle that we've really gotten ourselves into, because we've bought into this lie of, supremacy of women. And it's really, again, funneling into politics and into power, and just how they have the capacity to control everything. And the woke movement, it's interesting to see, because a lot of us think, well, this just came out of nowhere. Well, they've been doing this kind of messaging and this kind of virtue signaling for 50 years now. We just didn't notice it. We just thought it was normal, because it was so, we're like that, it was just the frog in the boiling water. We just got used to it. And they also told us things that we like to hear, that the commercials about men, either we're in control and we're powerful and we're smart, or the opposite, we're the victims. It's either one or the other. So we're really playing with our emotions there too, in a lot of different ways. And I think identifying these things goes a long way. But again, we have to see how entrenched this is, and how much we've all been really sabotaged or brainwashed by this long, years and years of indoctrination.
And you're right about how long this has been going on. And for so long, I think people have said, well, I've got to be politically correct. I don't want to upset the apple cart. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to make people angry. But now I think it's gotten to the point, Carrie, where people are feeling coerced. They are feeling forced to say things, acknowledge things, accept things that just aren't true, that just aren't real. Had a great guest on earlier this week named Brendan O'Neill, who has written a book called The Heretic's Manifesto, essays about the unsayable. And one of the things, his first chapter is entitled, Her Penis. This notion that women can have a penis, that men can menstruate, that we are now being simplified into people who are birthing people, chest feeding people. It's crazy. And I think it's finally gotten so crazy that it's no longer about, let's just be nice and not oppress people. It's I think people are feeling forced to say and accept things that just aren't real. How much is that a part of where we are right now?
No, I think that's absolutely where we are right now. And I think it's also really interesting, though, because it feels like there's an overstep happening where people are beginning to wake up and realize, like, okay, this has just gone too far. This is crazy, and we've got to start doing something about that. So I think that aspect is working to our advantage. Certainly is what's happened with Bud Light and Target. People are finding ways to just push back, even if it's just by not purchasing things, and which I think will give pause to other corporations. But up until really this year, that was a very hard thing to sort of use a boycott or anything to actually change things politically. So I think we have a lot of hope in that aspect. But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I think the way out of it is not, we can't keep doing what we've been doing. We can't keep encouraging, this women to be the sort of whatever we think they want to be kind of attitude. We have to sort of get back to recognizing that our bodies tell us something about who we are, our souls, our relationship with men. All of these pieces are vitally important, and we can't ignore them because it's, you're perceived as politically incorrect or, somehow dated or brainwashed.
Yeah.
So, I think we have our work cut out for us.
We have our work cut out for us. These are strange things. You clearly have researched a great deal, as you mentioned, for this book. Was there any particular result or observation that you made that you sort of went, I didn't expect that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I really, most of the first half of the book, all the very first wave feminist stuff that I dug into, I was amazed by. I had no idea. I think we've heard a lot that, maybe feminism was hijacked in the 60s by the leftists and whatnot. But I was amazed. I thought I would find like lovely things about women or something. I just had no idea what was there. But one of the things that really just threw me for a loop was the very first feminist vision actually was articulated by a man, by Percy Shelley. He's an English poet writing around the time, he died in 1822. And he's using the ideas from his mother-in-law, whom he never met, but Mary Wollstonecraft, and then his father-in-law, William Godwin, who had been an anarchist and was very much against marriage. Anyway, their two works he put together and created this vision of the independent woman, who was this woman named Sithna, and his wife, not surprisingly, is writing Frankenstein at that time. She's Mary Shelley. She wrote the book Frankenstein. So he creates this woman, Sithna, who's the very first woman in all of history to not have a husband. She doesn't have children. Her only relationship is actually with Satan. So it was really amazing to me to see, where that vision came from, because that's what was passed down through the 1800s. But also to see just how much the occult was involved in that era. The 1900s, things change a lot because communism really starts influencing feminism. And I think the communist tugs on and really the lifestyle of Betty Friedan was another thing I was not expecting either. There were a lot of surprises in this book. And I keep hearing from people who have read it that they just couldn't believe it. They don't know why. They've never heard this before. And that was kind of my reaction. Like, why aren't we hearing this? And I think a lot of it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Is just a lot of polish has been put on the feminist movement, and nobody wants to make it look bad and, damage that narrative. So that's really what's behind a lot of why we don't know what all of these things that I've discovered in my book.
All right. You just threw a name out that I want. And you said the lifestyle of Betty Friedan. She is one of those people who was a guest speaker at Cal that I went to listen to.
Oh, wow.
What surprised you about the lifestyle of Betty Friedan? This is interesting.
So Betty Friedan was actually, there's a whole book written on her that I hadn't seen before until I started researching this, by someone who was very sympathetic to her. It was a friend of hers that wanted to make the argument, she was this communist even at the time of McCarthy, and she still made it through McCarthyism and promoted the movement. She was involved in this group called the Congress for American Women that was actually, it had to be disbanded by the House Committee for Un-American Activities in 1949, I think. But it was basically a Soviet propaganda movement for getting academics and influential women involved in communism. And there's so much in my book, but Horowitz makes this great case for just, she always claimed to be just a housewife. She wasn't interested in women's issues until the 50s. And, there are actually articles and it shows there's a lot of involvement that she had in the Communist Party long before that, even I think starting when she was maybe a senior in high school, but certainly when she was in college and there on out. And you can see threads of it in her work. She's got this quote from angles that Horowitz found in one of her journals. And it talks all about how, women will not be free until they are out of the home, that it's the workplace that will free them. And, that's straight out of Marx and Engels. I mean, that's Hitler's Auschwitz, work will set you free. And that was really the goal that she had. So this is why she called the home, a comfortable concentration camp, and, was very much involved in trying to psychologically lead women out of the home instead of doing what she perceived to be their enslavement, staying home with their family.
It's amazing. I'm not surprised to hear this. And we know that Marxism is behind a lot of the strange movements in our country right now. And I think people are finally waking up to that.
Certainly.
But a comfortable concentration camp.
It's in her book. I mean, it's amazing.
I hadn't heard that before. So clearly I didn't pay close enough attention to Betty Friedan when I was, but that is crazy to me. Like, I'm experiencing these feelings of being angry about it and being baffled by it, and also thinking, please, people, accept your own reality. And why would you let somebody else tell you that you're living in a comfortable concentration camp? And why? So we get that people want power and they want to break up the nuclear family, and they want everyone to rely upon them, and they want people to feel unsafe and nervous and scared. And so they need the magazines and they need everything else. In the meantime, I'm just wondering why people buy all of this. Like, why are we that weak? And I think the answer is probably yes, that we just go, oh, yes, I need this.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, especially looking at Betty Friedan's work, because the woman was a psychology student. She knew how to get women to think the way that she wanted them to think like Marxists. And there's a great quote from Simone de Beauvoir that says, if we give women the option of staying home or leaving home, they will 100% stay home. So the idea Friedan was working with was, how do we make it attractive to women? How do we make them feel like they're missing out? How do we make this look like there's something that is outside the home that they can't get inside the home that's going to make them much happier, that fear of missing out attitude. So she uses all of those tactics in this work, and women just completely bought into it. And, sadly, this is, again, looking back at the 60s and 70s, you've got there's cultures in chaos, but you also have kind of the new use of media. And you have women like Gloria Steinem, who's very attractive and very articulate, who are selling this. And, magazines were seeing the popularity. Ms. Magazine obviously was a huge splash. So when you both make it attractive, you help women feel like this is something important for them. And then you don't give them any alternatives. What else is, that's all you need. You don't have to do anything other than just keep funneling the exact same message out to women day in and day out. And I think that's what we're experiencing.
I think that it's important that you and I agree that we're not saying there haven't been oppressed women. There have been women who have been trafficked. There have been women who have been abused. All of it. So two things can be true, right? So that is definitely a reality, because men are physically bigger and stronger. They have this power, or they have financial power, or whatever it is,
or they're just awful relationships. Right. There's awful men, right?
Or they're just awful, and there are a lot of awful women too. Let's be frank, right? We're all capable of being jerks, but to say that the only option for that woman in an abusive relationship is never go near another man. Get out of that relationship and see, this is what men are.
Yeah.
That's just a false choice. And, I clearly some women have discovered that. They've discovered that they can find a partner who is completely wonderful. But I just wonder how much damage amplifying those stories and making it look like, see, this is toxic masculinity. This is what exists among all men. And therefore, just get the hell away from them.
Yeah, no, and we see that in spades in the 70s. You've got, there's definitely a movement to say that the relationship of, woman to woman was the ideal relationship, because the lesbian relationship does not involve serving a man in any way, and it doesn't involve the danger of pregnancy. So that was really a part of the movement, in addition to just getting rid of gender completely, like let's just whitewash this. And that's what we've headed into now. But yeah, it's again, that very strange relationship of we don't want men to be men, but we want to be like men, but we hate all men. It's just an odd.
It is really bizarre.
What is going on here?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
no wonder there's a lot of people are unhappy. I mean, it's just such a confusing, conundrum. It's like,
right.
How can you possibly feel healthy and confident?
Right.
Before I let you go, and again, folks, the book is The End of Woman: How Smashing the Patriarchy Has Destroyed Us. Carrie Gress is the author. I like to ask people what gives them hope, because clearly I don't think we're in an ideal place in the world right now. And I maybe I'm naive to believe that we can find an ideal place in the world, but what gives you hope, Carrie?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is, I see a great ray of hope in what's happening with a lot of the moms movements right now. That's kind of incredible to me, because we've seen this happen before. I mean, Phyllis Schlafly and her Eagle Forum, no matter what people think of Phyllis Schlafly and the Eagle Forum, she was highly effective in stopping the Equal Rights Amendment. And this came out of nowhere. I mean, it was just all these, meddling moms that got involved and push that in that direction. And I think that moms are sort of this wild card that, people in power don't really know what to do with. And they really want us to just stay quiet, because they know we talk to other moms. They know we share on Instagram and, other social media. They know we also influence our children and our husbands and our wider family. And that's what they've been trying to control for so long. And it finally feels like women are saying, like, this is crazy. Like, something has got to stop here. So I think that is a really great place to see a lot of hope, is that, especially because these are women that are not celebrities. They don't already have this amazing social status and are, preaching down to us, but they're just out there, angry at what's happening with their families and their children and at their schools and whatnot. And I think that that's really exciting. And especially because most of us have felt very alone. Like, am I the only person out there that thinks this? And so these groups, I think, are doing a lot to help change that.
I think that's a great point. And there are many of them. And so the idea that they're all kind of flourishing, bubbling up at the same time, kind of makes you think that there's a worldwide, at least a nationwide realization of what's happening to kids, and that they don't want this for their kids. Yeah. So it is really an interesting time to be alive, sometimes a very terrifying time to be alive. But I'm so grateful that you've written this book, The End of Woman, and I encourage people to pick it up and read it. It is you've done some really interesting research there that, like we talked about with Betty Friedan, people don't know about and are going to find fascinating. So, Dr. Carrie Gress, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. It's great to be here with you.
As always, folks, I end my podcast the same way. Every day I say, be brave, as I think this is a brave work of writing, and do good. Just be kind to each other, and we'll see you next time.